honestly, I'm so afraid that other people are paying attention to how I spend things, but I don't even pay attention to how I spend things. Like, if I can't give a shit about it, then why are other people giving a shit about my spending, you know? Hello?
Hello.
Oh man, you came in so quietly. I didn't hear you.
I was making sure I had everything set, and then I looked at the screen and I was like, oh yeah, you're here too.
I was looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Oh, vaguely familiar with that.
Some light last-minute research.
Okay.
I have a tagline, unless you have one.
Oh, good, because I always forget until the last second.
Okay. I always ask you, not because I expect you to, but because I don't want to, if you actually
sometimes I do actually
one.
think of one, but yeah, usually it's right when we sit down, I'm like, shit.
Hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
And welcome back to another episode of Pickles and Vodka, the mental health podcast where we spend Valentine's Day talking about the sexiest things ever, like money. I feel like I could have phrased that better. I'm Christina.
And I'm Lauren.
And yes, in fact, today we are talking about money. I love how we said that in unison.
I know.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, we had an episode where Lauren chose the topic of finances and how they affect our mental health. And then we asked you all, how has money affected your mental health? Or what do you wish you had learned about finances? So yeah, we'll be sharing your responses. And I already have so many notes on the responses.
Oh, good. I feel like I saw an early one, or maybe you just told me we had an early one and I read one that we just got. That's all I know.
Well, also in thinking about the stuff that they brought up, it brought up a lot of stuff that we forgot to talk about last time. So I'm sure we'll be sharing additional personal stories sprinkled throughout.
Yes, will be very good.
All right. But Lauren, where are you at?
Oh, well.
You always do that. You always start it with,
I realized that too. I was just going to say that. Oh, we're on the same wavelength too.
Sorry, I'm an asshole. I'll shut up.
No, it's just so funny because I do always say that. And this was the single time where I realized, fuck, I always do that. I was seconds from saying that.
Seconds from saying that.
So I feel like I have been hit kind of hard the past week with all of the regular mental health things that I deal with, cyclically, let's say.
Would you care to elaborate on regular mental health things?
Yes. Yes, I would, co-host.
Do tell.
So obviously, I feel like the eating disorder is only so cyclical, and it just feels like...
Well, yeah, you talked about that last week.
Yeah, I was sometimes that goes away a bit, but it always feels, for the most part, shit's always kind of there.
Don't I know it?
Yeah, the past week or two, I also have been feeling the depression, the anxiety, oh, holy hell, the undiagnosed ADHD has been going nuts at work, I've noticed. And in particular, the depression piece, because as we know, I've gotten into this new relationship and it's going well and I'm enjoying it. So I feel like I took a week of just pretending it wasn't happening, because I was yeah, but you feel mostly good about your life and things are good. So you're not allowed, these feelings shouldn't be coming up.
Oh, you mean pretending the feelings weren't happening?
Yeah. But I'm guess what? That's how somebody with depression works.
Yeah.
You don't always get to choose it.
Exactly.
So that kind of sucks. And I think I've been feeling really inadequate at work too, which has been tough. I've talked about this in the past, but I feel sometimes it hits harder, just kind of feeling particularly the higher up people, and in particular, our overall boss, owner of the company.
Yeah.
It feels like these are people that I'm just they just don't like me. And that's tough because, I feel like these people don't like me, and not in a way that I think my job is threatened, because I do think they behave professionally and they don't see any reason why they'd fire me. It's just a personal, I don't want to talk to you. If I ask you a question out of obligation and I give you about 15 seconds to answer and then my attention's somewhere else, it's just clear. I'm you don't want to be around me. You don't want to hear what I have to say. You just don't like me. I don't know. That just kind of feels futile when you're at work. It's but why? I'm a people pleaser. We just discussed this a couple weeks ago.
I was literally just about to say, how important is it to you that your coworkers like you? And to you, as a people pleaser, it's a big deal. And that's totally valid. You're allowed to be miserable at your work just because people don't like you. That's an extremely valid reason to feel the way you're feeling.
Yeah, it's mainly a self-esteem thing because, like I said, at least everyone's being professional. I don't think anyone's trying to like take me down because they're like, yeah, I don't really care for her, so I'm going to find ways to make her fail. It's just not enjoyable.
Well, yeah. Going back to our people pleasing episode, people pleasing usually comes from a place of low self esteem or whatever.
Yeah, so that's been my past week or so.
So it's Valentine's Day. Are you doing anything with the bassist?
I am. We didn't make any like solid plans. So after this, then we discussed it and we said like maybe, we thought of getting like dinner and a drink, and then we're like, maybe we should plan to go to a bar with a kitchen because I don't think getting a table spur of the moment on Valentine's Day when it falls on a Friday is going to work so well. So that's pretty much our plan.
Aww.
But he did get me a massage.
Oh my God.
My first real one.
Are you nervous?
I'm excited.
What are you going to get done? Like, I'm not familiar with like the different types of massages.
Obviously, I'm not either. But I think the most popular is just like a basic Swedish massage. And that's what he said, that he got me that for an hour.
Sounds intense.
I've just got like a little like code thing that I scan and pick a time and go.
Now tell the listeners exactly what time you're going to be out there and tell them the address.
And where it is. Yep.
That's really cute, though. And that's like a really good gift because it's something I know you would never spend on yourself.
Especially, I've been coming here on Thursday nights after my aerial class the last couple of weekends. And so then I spend like the entire rest of the weekend just like, I'm in pain.
That's so real. I'm 32 and I feel that. I can't imagine at your old age.
No, it's true. I was actually happy to find out one of my classmates, she is 45. And I was like, oh, good, we're the same age, so we can experience this together.
Is she a badass?
Like, not a badass in, like what you would think. Not like a motorcycle mama.
Okay,
something.
I was like, what do you think I'm thinking? But that's exactly what I was thinking.
Right.
We know each other so well.
No, it's like she's someone that, you would see her and think like, oh, you were a sorority girl. But then you talk to her and you're like, you're kind of awesome. And then it's like, yeah, and you're also in your mid-40s doing this shit with me. So you're pretty awesome.
Hell yeah. I'm glad you have a friend there.
So, where are you at?
Well, PHP is still going strong. I finished my 3rd week today. I actually had a pretty good week. I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast. I know we talked about it, the piano performance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, in one of my PHP groups, there was an assignment for everyone to give a 3 to 5 minute presentation or demonstration or whatever about something that's helped your recovery. And I decided I was going to bring my keyboard over and play the piano because I didn't want to give an oral presentation.
Yes, I would have freaked out hearing that assignment because that's the first thing I would have thought of.
But I did end up speaking a little bit because I kind of gave a brief backstory. Like, I used to play piano from 3rd grade to sophomore year of college. And in my chaotic household, it was one of the only times I could just retreat into my own world and keep myself busy and engaged. Like, now that I know that I've had undiagnosed ADHD, things like piano fully engage all your senses. You can't really get lost in your thoughts. At least it's harder for me.
No, I agree with you completely.
And then once I started drinking and dropped out of, the Christian college where I was studying piano, I was like, as a class, not as a major or anything.
Right.
Anyway, I didn't have a keyboard for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only when I had my breakdown in 2023 that I got this keyboard from a friend and I started playing again. And that's like one of the only bright spots to come from that whole period is that I've just been practicing in like 10-minute increments here and there and relearning all these pieces I used to play in high school. And I've been teaching myself so many new pieces and like, it's such a good feeling.
Actually, did you know that I'm kind of in that same boat right now?
Oh my God, let's geek out about it together.
Yes, because I've had like for years, I've had my electric piano, but I don't know why when I'm home, I don't think of playing it a lot, and I will always mean to and not do it. But at the boyfriend's house, when he bought his house, it had a small spin-it piano.
Oh my God, I'm so jealous. I literally saw a painting of one of those in the museum, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But I was like, oh my God, I want to spin it.
I know, and that's what I grew up learning on. And he said, like it was with the house, so he could take it or not. And he doesn't play, but he was just like, it looks in good shape. Of course I want it.
It was just waiting for you, Lauren.
I know.
Oh my God. That's so cool. I'm so jealous. I want a
And
picture of
so
it.
yeah, now like when I'm over here, I brought some music over and I've been taking time every week to like play some old songs and I'm hoping to get them worked up again. Like, yes,
Yes.
I love
Oh, that's so
it.
exciting.
I know we're both doing this.
Oh, yeah. Listeners, music is a really great coping tool. Hot take. Or even, this applies to any hobby. If you feel like it's been way too long and you couldn't possibly get back into it, just do like 10 minutes at a time.
Yeah,
No
you don't have
pressure.
to immediately get back to where you were. Because I feel like we do feel like that pressure sometimes that it's like,
Totally.
oh, I have to start over, but it's not really.
No, there's still this one song that I used to play my senior year of high school. I played for my very last recital, actually, and I still can't play it through to the end, and it's driving me crazy. And it's also supposed to be played very fast. Like, I used to play all these fast pieces, and now, like,
Same.
I can only play super slowly. But, like, I don't care because it's fun, and I'm proud of
Yeah.
myself. So,
Yeah.
anyway, this week I went to the art museum by me with two of my friends from PHP. Shout out Taylor and Lorenzo. It was a rainy afternoon. It was dark and there were hardly any people in there. It was so cool. And they have this piano built in the 1800s.
It's beautiful. I saw a picture.
So I moved here 3 years ago, and that's how long I've been coming to this art museum. And every single time I see that piano, I'm like, I want to play that, but there's too many people around because
Mm-hmm.
there's a placard that says, please ask for employee assistance if you want to play,
Oh.
because they can unlock it and they give you gloves because you have to wear gloves. The reason I know this is because my friend flagged down one of the employees and was like, can she play the piano? She knows how to play the piano.
Yep.
So yeah, I played a couple pieces and it was just like spine tingling. I don't know. It was one of those moments where I was like, I'm really lucky and grateful.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been good. It's been very full.
Mm-hmm.
And by it, I mean my life. Not always in good ways. I'm still really stressed and burnt out.
Well, and especially I feel like we've talked some about, you being back in PHP, but the fact there's so long days and they're every day, I'm just like, that's adding a lot.
Plus, I work every weekend, 10 to 6.
Yeah, I would say I didn't know how much you were still working, but I
Yeah.
knew you were doing some. And so I was like, having a job on top of that is full time.
Yeah, my next free day is March 2nd. And that's only if I don't skip any days of PHP.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I can't wait to get back to working at the hotline because I've been really stressed about money, which is a great segue
Mm-hmm.
into our topic.
We're so good at them because we're professionals.
We are professionals who have almost done 200 episodes, by the way. Right up top, I will just say we were supposed to have Janai go over these answers with us, but it completely slipped my mind until this is so embarrassing. They reminded me.
Oh no.
I texted them. I was like, "Hey, do you have any harm reduction financial tips?"
Uh-huh.
And they're like, "Oh, I thought we were going to go over it." And
Oh.
yeah, I feel really bad about it, but they did give us some tips, which I'm going to share at the end.
Okay, good.
So first, we're going to play our voicemail, which is from Jess.
Okay.
Voicemail superstar over here.
Yeah. Loyal voicemailer.
Some of y'all need to catch up. Someone fight Jess for her crown,
Yeah.
for her mic. Just kidding. There's plenty to go around. Anyway, here she is.
I have mental health issues, so of course I have finance problems. Maybe that's not a stereotype I should put out, but at least it's applicable to my own situation. I will say that, as a single parent, it is not easy trying to provide all the time. And when some of those shortcomings happen, it absolutely plays into my depression, and it may be a situational event that's playing into my already existing depression, but it's definitely exacerbating those symptoms. And when I get depressed, my ADHD kicks in and says, hey, we should chase dopamine and buy things. So then I end up buying crap on Amazon I don't need, or currently I've been really into reading, and of course I have to own the physical copies. So then I'm buying books all the time, and I also collect vinyl records. So it's just, some of those things. And it is frustrating, especially when the way you were taught about finances was not really helpful. I very much think my parents did the best for what they had at the time. But growing up, the way we were talked about finances was you don't talk about it. You don't talk about it, you don't ask. It's improper. That was like the worst thing you could do, is discuss your specific finances with people. In my family's viewpoint, I remember when I got married, my ex-husband and I bought a house, and I thought it was so inappropriate that he told his mom how much money he was making an hour, how much money I was making, what we purchased our home for, what our bills cost. I remember being so appalled, thinking that's private information because we were raised differently. He saw no problem with it. I was grossly bothered by it. I still stand on that soapbox that if you're married, you should not be discussing the nitty-gritty details of your finances with your parents. But I also think that, some of the taboo assumptions around discussing finances that was taught to me as a child made it really hard for me to really kind of grasp and learn appropriately, maybe, to save. Although my sibling has always been great at saving and budgeting money. I think part of it is tied to my ADHD and my impulse control that, I just didn't learn about early enough. So I think it is all tied together, unfortunately. And yeah, I think having some of those barriers put up around being able to talk about some of the finances did make it harder for me to grasp.
Yes, 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 and yes.
You know how hard it was not to mention that earlier when you were talking about ADHD and depression?
Yeah.
It's like perfect for you this week.
No, honestly, I don't really fall into what she said with the ADHD usually about the impulse buying. But I did get the depression of like, I buy things to feel better.
Totally.
Like sometimes it makes it so that you make less money because you can't get yourself to work.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to make yourself feel better with things because you need something to feel better. You'll take anything. So yeah, depression really sucks as far as trying to manage money.
Yeah. Some days when I was really depressed, the only thing that would get me up was like going to the vape store for a new vape, which is really sad. But like, hey, whatever gets me out of the house,
Right.
But, those things are expensive. And I haven't been working full time in over a year. And so it's really easy to feel like a bad person, which we kind of talked about last time.
Yeah, I'm like it's hard to then justify it to yourself, like you feel some guilt, but at the same time, and I mean, I know like this isn't a good habit, so maybe it's not the best thing to be suggesting this with, but I'm just like, but it's something that's making you feel better in the moment, so it is worth that money.
Yeah. I mean, like I said last time, you could die tomorrow and you just don't know what's going to happen. So I don't believe in hoarding money. I mean, maybe that's just because I also wasn't taught about savings.
Yeah.
But like, I do think there's a healthy balance. Even if you don't make a lot of money, you should still be able to have access to small pleasures. Like everyone deserves that. And I don't know, that seems like an incredibly privileged thing to say. And it also sounds kind of like toxic positivity.
It doesn't really, though. Like, it would be if you'd worded it differently. I guess if you had said it as in, like, this is me giving you advice. You should indulge in some small pleasure. But when you're saying just like, it should be just a humanity thing. Unfortunately, we know it's not. Like, that's just kind of saying it sucks that it isn't for everyone.
I have so much to say about money as like a reflection of your morality, but we'll get to that later. One thing that Jess talked about besides the depression and the dopamine and that stuff was her education and the way her parents taught her like to never talk about money.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know your reaction to her husband's approach, which is to say everything about money.
Yeah, I felt mixed about that because I understand, like, at first I was thinking like, oh, well, I might agree with her more, but it's coming just from different viewpoints. I didn't think him like telling his mom how much he made, but then when he said said her hourly rate, I was like, whoa, back off.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, like, if you...
That sounded a little too personal.
Well, no, like, I was going to ask if she had those conversations with her husband prior, but then I realized, no, you just said you never talked about money. So, like, why would you have that conversation with him beforehand?
Yeah, so you just get blindsided by someone that doesn't think that's a big deal because you're like, I thought it was a big deal.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, I don't even think you should share finances with your spouse, let alone your parents.
And yeah, I realized when she was talking and I think about that, and I think it's also because of like how I was raised, because my parents, I feel like you didn't talk about money, but I could sense enough to know, that money was tight. And then I feel like when I got older, like went to college and then moved out, the main message I was getting from them is just like any windfall or any like good fortune with money, that their first response is always just pretty much like, but the bottom could always drop out from under you.
Yeah. Oh man. Bang. Chill the fuck out. I already fed him so he wouldn't do this. I'm like crying over here. Last week I hinted that I was going through my old journals from like high school, and this one entry from April of 2010 stuck out to me because it is all about a financial crisis my family was going through that I
Oh.
completely forgot about. So it starts out with positive news. Today I received a letter in the mail from Oral Roberts University saying that my application has been accepted and I'm eligible for a $7,500 scholarship. Tuition was $28,000 a year, by the way.
Okay.
Although I am very torn when it comes to post-high school decisions, seeing that acceptance letter provided a ray of hope on a day when everything seemed hard. Our financial situation is worse. We can't afford a single thing until payday, not even groceries. My parents are talking about taking out a loan to get the car fixed, which would only get us into more debt. And I am 17 at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so sad and cringe, but I'm going to share it with y'all anyway. God, you know how hard it is to trust you at times like these. I know that the future of our family is secure in your hands, but sometimes my puny human eyes can't see that far. I am so scared. Whenever I'm around my siblings, I try to act like everything will be okay and to just go on as normal. I motivate them, but by myself, it's all I can do not to curl up in a ball and cry for an hour.
Oh.
Please help me to trust you more, dear God. I love you so much, and I need you to know now I need you now more than ever. Holy shit.
Well, there's the religious indoctrination, but the fact that you felt so responsible for your family.
Yeah, and there's others like that, but that one really stuck out to me, like I said.
I feel like that in particular really proves something that you've said often, that felt like you were on a level with your parents of we have to worry about this money, and then there's the kids that you have to help protect.
Yeah, and, the prayer at the end. Later on, I'll talk about some of our financial influences and how they intersect with religion. But there was a common belief that, if you were doing poorly financially, then it must be a reflection of how you've been acting. There must be a reason God's displeased with you because he's letting this financial hardship befall you. Either that or it's a test. And
yes.
Yeah. And then, in fact, in the next entry, I talk about how the military helped us out. And then I was like, thank you, God.
Because I feel like that's the second half is the kind of message that I always got that, it was like, you might fall into, struggling with money, but it's just kind of like, you just have to trust that God will provide for you. Ugh. Somehow he will.
Do they have prosperity gospel in Catholicism?
Not that I know of. I haven't heard that.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Basically, it's common in a lot of mega churches, like the college I went to. Basically, if you are a good person, God will reward you financially, specifically. Like your wealth will be a reflection. And it's always these super rich pastors being like, if you follow God, you can be like me. And it's damaged a lot of people. Like I've heard so many stories.
It's weird that you subscribe to that idea when you're super rich.
Yeah. And sometimes they even convince people to like give, like we were talking about tithing last week.
Yes.
A lot of these pastors will be like, prove your faith, give to the church, prove you're a good servant, you will be rewarded. Mm-hmm. And then they just like, people have literally given their wedding rings to their churches. There's a great podcast, Leaving Eden, that talks about cases like that. Go listen to that if you want to know more. I'm going to stop this tangent now.
It's okay. I was just going to say like one more quick thing about just talking with your parents about finances is as she was talking, I realized also that to this day, it's got to signify something because I lie to my parents about money. Like I tell them as in, it's good news at like, oh, I got a bonus at work. But I always tell them about like 2/3 of the amount.
Whoa, that's interesting.
And I would do the same thing, like apartments that I would get. It's like I'd knock $100 off the rent and be like, it's only this.
Why do you do that? Is it like a conscious thing? I mean, obviously, but
Well, I think it is like related to them, like I said, their first reaction to anything like that is always just like, oh, that's great. But you never know when you'll just like lose all your money randomly and be stuck. So make sure you just save and don't spend anything. So it's kind of like telling them, like, oh, yeah, I got some money, but not a lot. Or I don't pay that much.
that is so interesting. Like, not gonna lie, my first reaction was like, oh my God, why would you do that? I don't know, there's some deep psychological issue there. And then I was like, wait a second, I do that all the time when I tell people that I got like a new top from the thrift store and it was like $8.99. I'll say, oh, I got this for $7.
For $5.
Yeah, but like, why and then I
Yeah.
realized that I think that the more money I paid for it, the more they'll judge me.
Yep.
And so I get it.
That's exactly like, as I was listening and realizing that, I was like, shit, what does that mean? Because I do that.
Listeners, can you relate?
Or diagnose us.
Please don't diagnose me. You can diagnose Lauren.
Yeah, I'm leaving it open.
She offers herself up.
Only about this thing. Don't just go after me.
Oh, man. You're like, Christina's getting more diagnoses. I got to catch up.
Yeah. Listeners, you got one for me?
But yeah, before we move on from Jess's voicemail, I did want to talk about boundaries. That's kind of what we were talking about before I went into my journal entries. Yeah, financial boundaries. Like, what do yours look like? You kind of were just talking about a big one.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I feel like other than that, I have a sort of hatred. I realized in the last few years that some of this stuff isn't more transparent, like as a general rule, but I still can't get myself to change. So still, if I'm talking about people and then it's all just very vague, like, oh yeah, I pay a lot or I paid a little. And yeah.
Well, speaking of change, last week we talked about the stages of change. So you said you want to change. What is that? What's like a specific change you could make? And like, what stage are you in?
It's not really me wanting to change, though. It's me wanting just the general viewpoint of how people skirt around money and feel like they can't be more open about it. I guess a more acceptable one that we kind of were just talking about is admitting to the fact that I spend money on myself. Like if I paid $15 for a top, say it was $15.
That's a really good goal, I think. Like that's just one little thing you can do. Like I'm noticing kind of with horror how often I do that. And also like one way that I have tried to be more transparent about money in the last year has been asking for help. Like I've talked about before, I've not only accepted gifts from people, but I've had to like reach out and ask my parents for money.
Yeah, which I know is not fun when you're an adult because I've had to do it too.
Exactly. No, I mean, no shame. Like I'm telling that to myself, to you, to everyone. No shame. Everyone needs help. Wouldn't you like to help people someday if you had the money?
Yeah.
Like I can't wait to help people when I have money.
Most of us, as long as we're not evil.
Yes. Man, we got so deep really fast. Good
Yeah.
and evil.
Yeah, thanks, Jess.
Thank you, Jess. I wouldn't expect anything else. So I guess that's your financial boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is like I never let people buy me things when I'm eating out, for instance, because I'm worried that I'll owe them and I can't afford it.
Yeah, I had a friend in high school and college. She was very much like that.
I always buy my own shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'll buy other people's shit.
Yeah, and it frustrated one of my other friends because a lot of times, she just wouldn't get anything. And it'd just literally be because she had no money.
Yeah.
And that other friend's always like, I'll buy you something. And no, and I'm like, I understand her, though.
You know what they say, Lauren. Pride goeth before a fall.
Oh.
All right. Do you want to read the comment that we got?
Yeah.
All right.
And this was a Peach comment.
Shout out.
I stay in a toxic relationship because he makes good money and can give me a life I can't achieve on my own. It's a very complicated thing, well beyond, tee-hee, look at my designer handbag, and more in line with, oh, hey, I might actually be able to own a home, even a nice one at that. I think a huge part of who I am as a person is the result of the absolute poverty I grew up in for the first part of my life. I am a workaholic, obsessed with saving up money and being frugal. My obsession with money is not an obsession with material things, but rather I am terrified of not having enough to afford decent housing, keep my electricity on, keep gas in the car, and buy fresh foods, forcing me to live in the types of housing from my youth and eat canned convenience and other ultra-processed foods.
Oh, Thank you so much for this comment. There is so much to talk about.
I mean, from the beginning, saying that like you stay in a bad relationship because it gives you financial security. I mean, have definitely been there.
Yeah, like I don't know why society is so keen on condemning people in your situation when they're not providing you the means to not be in that situation.
Yeah.
Or like, man, I'm going to get into the Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
That's fine.
But yeah, basically it's not your fault. You want to survive and
Mhm.
have, like we said, some joys in life.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Lauren?
Yes. Like I couldn't rattle them off right now, but I've seen it several times.
Yeah, so I mean, we just discussed this in PHP last week, and it comes
Mhm.
up a lot because a lot of people in the group are broke, like they're in halfway houses, and they can't always. Like one guy's been skipping a lot of groups because he's trying to find a job, and they keep extending his date and making
Mhm.
him pay more because he misses days. But it's like,
Yeah.
but finally today we had a really good discussion. They were like, "Yeah, we get it. If you need to, leave group, if that's right for you, you need to meet your basic needs, which the bottom of the pyramid, so the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a pyramid, right? So at the
Mhm.
base of the pyramid, it's physiological needs. This is your
Basic health.
basic health: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing. It says reproduction,
Oh.
which interesting. So yeah, you got to meet those before anything else. And then after that, it's safety needs. So your
Mhm.
personal security, employment, resources, health, property. After that is love and belonging, friendship,
Mhm.
intimacy, family, sense of connection. So I hope we help fill that need, y'all.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm cheesy. It's Valentine's Day. And then there's esteem. So respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom. And then the very tip of the pyramid, only if all of those other things are met, then
Mhm.
you can achieve self-actualization, which is the desire to become the most that one can be. Not becoming the best you can be, just having the desire.
Yeah.
And that was, I know, again, I like dumped a lot of info on you, but that
That's the other
was
thing, like you said, that it's makes a pyramid, but it's literally states that like you can't even attempt to have the things in the second level if you don't have the first.
exactly like I couldn't be employed if I didn't have shelter.
Right.
And like, if I'm not employed, then how can I have, love and belonging
Mhm.
or like a sense of connection? I don't know. And
Yeah.
if I don't have that, how can I have any need to be a unique individual?
When you think of it like that it's almost just, like knocking people out of the population, like at this level, then we're like, oh, you're cut. And then it's like second level of cuts. So who's going to make it to the top? Very few of us.
It made me feel seen in two huge ways. The first one was it made me feel a lot less guilty about not having the desire to recover most of the time
Mhm.
because not all my basic needs are being met. And then instead of looking for solutions there or placing the blame on, barriers, I go, oh, it's my fault that I don't
Yeah.
want recovery. Like, I'm just a bad person.
Yeah, because your brain is just like stuck on that like third or fourth level, thinking like, oh, why aren't I fighting for these things? And not realizing like it's because I don't have the base.
Yeah, exactly. And then the second way it made me feel seen was that it made me feel we talk about feeling guilty for that things are going well. And
Mhm.
because things are going semi well right now, like mood wise for me, I feel like I should be happier. I should be more like my self esteem should be higher. I should be closer to
Mm.
self
Mhm.
actualization. But looking at my hierarchy of needs, I'm like, oh, I actually am not as high up on the pyramid as I thought I was. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm in the middle now. I think I'm working on my love and belonging need,
Mhm.
but I mean, I still have a long way to go before I reach self-esteem and self-actualization. Like that's seems really far away right now. And so it
Mhm.
made me feel better about feeling shitty, I guess,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
It does.
I'll stop talking now and give you a chance to say something.
I feel like there was a lot that pointed to kind of like the conversation that we just had too. Like when this person says like, my obsession with money is not an obsession with material things. It's about basically wanting confirmation that you can continue life.
Yeah.
from what it sounds like. And that's what I was thinking, like, oh, yeah, I mean, I feel the same way, that it's like, that's why I feel guilty saying I spent money on myself, because I feel like that's what people will first see, like, oh, she's self-absorbed. And it's
Yeah,
like,
like people are keeping track. Like, honestly, I'm so afraid that other people are paying attention to how I spend things, but I don't even pay attention to how I spend things. Like, if I can't give a shit about it, then why are
yeah.
other people giving a shit about my spending, you know?
I know. Whenever someone puts it that way, then that's the first thing I think. I'm just like, yeah, maybe because I am concerned about money, it might cross my mind if someone just says, like, I got all like the newest tech for myself or something. And you're just like, gee, it must be nice. But I don't let that weigh into who I think they are as a person. Like, I'm not thinking 2 days later still like, oh, geez, this person that gets all this nice stuff whenever they want.
Exactly. I mean,
It's out of my head in like 5 minutes.
it's also important to realize that you are more prone to this kind of dependency. Like, if you did grow up lacking in things, like
Yeah.
you, I was raised on mostly like processed food. And I mean, my mom was doing
Mhm.
the best she could. She was raising 7 fucking kids. I
Yeah.
don't blame her for feeding us like chicken nuggets 3 nights a week.
No.
But I know what it's like to grow up and being like, I cannot live that way again. Like, if I go near ramen noodles now, like cup of noodles, I'll barf. It's like
Yeah, even before like vegetarianism, that's why I like very
before
quickly was like,
vegetarianism.
I meant mine, not like before it existed.
Oh, okay. I keep forgetting you're a vegetarian. And so I was like, you were telling me before vegetarianism was a thing.
Yes, in the days before.
You're not that old. God.
But no, yeah, like before I turned to that, then I know
Okay.
early on, then I felt the same way about like seeing a hot dog. I was just like, no,
Okay, hot dogs I do
turns my
kind of
stomach.
miss when they're grilled. I haven't had a good vegan dog yet.
I agree. I've tried a couple. I feel like that's one they just can't get, and I accepted that.
But yeah, I think poor people are seen as less moral, and like the things that poor people, and I don't mean to use that term
Mm-hmm.
like I'm a poor person.
Both of us grew up as poor people.
Yeah, and so like people judge the things that people do just to survive. Like take people who sell drugs, for instance, or,
Mm-hmm.
do sex work. They're just trying to survive, and they're seen as immoral, in some case criminal
Mm-hmm.
people.
Even, and I try in general, as a rule, not to read comments on the internet, but
Ugh, here we go.
especially, I feel like what gets me sometimes is like an Instagram post that I relate to, because that's not quite as bad as like reading a political article and reading
Yeah.
comments.
Yeah.
But it always pisses me off when I see one about servers or like any sort of
Mm.
like wait staff. And usually, they're bitching about like how we're expected to tip them.
Oh my God. Yeah. People, don't get me
Just,
started
yeah,
on that.
the comments that will come up that are just like, well, you should be doing your job if you expect a tip. And it's like,
Why do we need tips in the first place?
yeah, I mean, like that's a thing in itself. I agree against tipping. But also, I always feel like people saying that, I'm just kind of like, oh, okay. You show me how you have done your job all the time while you were at work. You've never goofed off. You've never let anything drop.
Never had a bad day.
Uh-huh. Because if you did, then you know what? They shouldn't have paid you for that day. I'm sure that would have made you happy.
Yeah. It's so odd to me that the people that get paid more get to do less work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know it sounds like I was born yesterday. I don't care. I know I know
No.
I come up as naive, but like that just boggles my mind.
Oh, I know.
But also what is hard and what is easy, you know?
True.
Ugh, it's so fucked up. I do have one more thing that I wanted to mention before we ended the episode. Do you
Mm-hmm.
have anything else to say about that comment? It kind of ties into what I'm about to talk about.
Okay, good. Because, yeah, I'm like, it's just kind of a general, like, I agreed with so much.
Yeah, so I could not end the episode without bringing up the name of a financial figure that heavily influenced my upbringing. Have you heard of Dave Ramsey?
Yes.
Okay. So he was a radio host and a speaker and like finance expert, and
Mm-hmm.
he launched this course called Financial Peace University that was taught in a bunch of churches and Christian schools, including my Christian high school.
Hmm.
So I've actually done the course 2 times, once in high school as like the curriculum for the class.
Oh, wow.
And the next, my cousin and his fiance were doing it at their church and they invited me. And I was like, sure, I'm in my early 20s. I'm going to learn about money.
Yeah.
And like, I will say there's a few of his principles that just make sense. Like if you have a bunch of debt, pay off the smallest one first. And then like the snowball method, he calls it. But hold on, I can't read my notes. Oh, okay. I have a whole section that just says Dave Ramsey ! The main issues that I have with him are, like I said earlier, he sees debt as a reflection of your character. So like if you have a lot of debt, you aren't doing something right. So in 2020, when COVID was hitting in March, he was doing a bunch of big events, like live events. And when there were ticket holders who were kind of like expressing concern about COVID, he mocked them and refused to give them their money back and said that anyone who wanted a refund was a wuss. But the one that bothers me the most is in 2021 on Fox News, he said, I don't believe in stimulus checks because if $600 or $1,400 changes your life, you were pretty much screwed already. You got other issues going on. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like someone who has being able to judge people that don't.
Yeah, so there's a lot of judgment, and he is totally against credit cards because debt is bad and makes you a bad person. And so I did not get my first credit card till I was like 23. And I was terrified of it for the longest time. Like to this day, I'm kind of terrified of it.
I am too.
Not to say that I haven't like maxed them out on binge food when I was severely bulimic. I paid it off last year, finally.
I just paid mine off too.
Oh my God.
Either a year and a half ago. Yeah, like just recently.
Holy shit.
That's for both of us.
That's for both of us for paying off our credit cards. But yeah, my parents got in a lot of credit card debt and went bankrupt. And so they were extra like Dave Ramsey. They were big disciples of his. I mean, what's your experience as a Catholic? Because Dave Ramsey, I feel like, was very popular with evangelicals.
Yeah, I did not even realize, like I said, I'd heard of him and I'd heard people say some of his, recommendations, but I didn't realize that there was such a religious connection with him.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we talked about this on the initial finance episode, but just to reiterate, and maybe something I hadn't said before, it immediately stirred up in something and made me super angry when you said that, like how he judges people having debt and saying like you did something wrong, because it just put me right back to that boyfriend I lived with who gave me crap for having debt. And at that point, my debt was my student loans. That's all the debt I had. But, like he was saying it like it was a dirty word. Like, I can't get into more of a future with you right now because I know that you come with debt.
Oh my God. Yeah. No.
And I just remember it pissed me off so much because, I have student loans because my dad decided to start his own business right before I went to school. He cashed in his 401k. He didn't pay himself for 2 years. Of course, I can't afford, to pay for college and have to go into debt, where his parents paid all of his college.
Oh my God. That makes me... Well, and that's one thing that Dave Ramsey is criticized for is his one size fits all approach. Like he doesn't consider different people's economic circumstances or whatever, and like less privileged people.
We don't all turn 18 and get the exact same amount of money to figure out what to do within our adult lives. Some of this is like people struggling through generations trying to build back. And sorry, they're not there yet.
Yeah. Oh my God. So my favorite comment that I found about Dave Ramsey, Crazy Cat Lady 331 on the millennial subreddit says, he's the AA of personal finance. He's for the person who will be triggered by using a credit card the same way a glass of wine with dinner could trigger an alcoholic. Isn't that perfect? Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to drop that in. Back to my journal. In November of 2009, I was considering joining the Air Force just so I could afford to go to college. And then when I got rejected because of my asthma and my psych ward stay, my dad was like, it's okay, the GI Bill will pay for your college. And so that's why I enrolled in this expensive Christian college. Okay. And I ended up dropping out junior year, but guess what? I still have fucking debt from that school.
Oh, geez.
And it's a lot. And I didn't even graduate. And my parents co-signed, so they owed even more. But when they went bankrupt, they were forgiven it.
Okay.
So they don't have any debt.
Okay.
I don't feel bitter about that at all.
No.
Whew, I feel like I'm dumping a lot of like my trauma in this episode. A lot of religious trauma, a lot of financial trauma.
But it's good. I mean, that was the initial thought of like talking about money, that I'm like, it's not just being about like, here's our thoughts on material things and why money is good or money is bad. It's like, no, it reaches deep into your life.
Yeah, we have so many scars from this stuff. I promise this is connected, but in PHP, we were talking about the difference between like psychological wounds and scars.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, you would like this because it's all about like protecting/hiding your wounds from people while they're fresh, because you need to protect it from the outside world. And then when it scars, that's when it's safe to like kind of talk about it. And I thought of you because you're very like private about things you're going through. And yeah, it felt like they were actually advocating for that.
I loved how you said it at the end. It's like, it's only when it scars that it's okay to talk about. Because I'm like, that's true. Like with my family, because they just don't understand a lot of things. It feels like when I can tell them, but it's okay, I came out on the other side. Then I can tell them like, oh yeah, but I went through this.
And maybe that's why, one of the reasons why you lie to them about money, because you feel like it's still too fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. I mean, my parents, when they were in the middle of their bankruptcy and they were in crisis, they didn't really talk about it. Like I wasn't living at home, so I didn't know much about it. And they only now started talking about it now that they're well off.
Right.
Now that it's a scar, I guess. Like I don't blame them.
Now that we have the end of the story, which is we got through it.
Exactly. I mean, I don't blame them one bit, because I do stuff like that.
Yeah, because I'm like, I do that all the time.
I mean, look at our fucking mental health. We don't talk about it unless we're like in recovery or like doing better. I mean, maybe not on this particular podcast, but in general.
Yeah. And even like, because I've been listening to some old episodes recently, and I think we have gotten better about this.
Yeah.
I hope that even when we do, like the where you at, then I feel like we'd avoid what we knew was the worst thing for like several weeks.
I know I shouldn't be talking. I spent months not talking about the fact that I was slowly breaking down. I gotta say, we've really turned things around since my breakdown.
Yeah.
That's all it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. This was very cathartic, I guess.
Yeah. Like I didn't think, like you said, that there was so many more things to use a therapy word, unpack, but we did.
Oh, I gotta read. So we talked about all the harm that people like Dave Ramsey can cause and his all or nothing approach. And I wanted to share Janai's harm reduction tips.
Yeah.
So I asked, do you have any general financial harm reduction tips you want me to pass on? And they said, mostly just fraud prevention stuff. Get a savings account, even if you're not actually able to save at the time. Because if your checking account gets compromised, you'll have another to transfer funds for your own access until things are sorted. Consider having an account at 2 different institutions in case you're the victim of check fraud or something that causes every account with a particular financial institution to lock down during the investigation. So yeah, those are really good tips. I'm definitely going to look into that. And that's just, to say there's no one way to do money, and fuck anyone who says otherwise.
Yeah.
All right. We will see you next week with a topic of Lauren's choice.
I shall choose a topic.
Yes. And happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Yeah.
We love
you. Love yourself.
Oh, God. All right. Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you heard, tell a friend about the podcast. You can direct them to picklesandvodka.substack.com, where you can find our entire back catalog and links to all our social media. We love hearing from our listeners, so send us a voice message at speakpipe.com/picklesandvodka or DM us at Pickles and Vodka Podcast on Instagram. My personal account is at XtinaJumper, and Lauren is at Lauren3_AFH. We'll see you next week.